There are moments when life as you know it completely falls apart. Divorce, loss, failure, heartbreak, financial collapse. It's 2 a.m., you can't sleep, and everything feels like it's over. But here's the truth. This is not the end. I'm Christy Zlakis, and this is a show where we talk about the strategies that turn heartbreak, loss, and failure into success, and share the real stories of people who've done it. Because no matter how dark it feels right now, your story isn't over. Hello and welcome back to This Is Not the End. Thank you for tuning in today. I am so excited to have this guest join us. Welcome, Carlie Bloxam.
Thank you for having me.
So Carlie is an attorney with my law firm, Z Family Law, but that's not actually how you and I met. You and I met a very long time ago.
20 years ago.
Oh my gosh, you're right. It's actually been more than 20 years. We met in the summer
almost
of
21.
2005. Yeah, almost 21. We met in Italy.
We did.
Carlie and I are both lawyers. And there was a time when I went to Italy with my family, and Carlie was there with a member of her family, and we were on a tour bus together. And I saw this girl wearing a University of Maryland sweatshirt, and I also was wearing something from University of Maryland because I went there. And I think you actually were the one who approached me on that bus.
I don't remember. I remember my dad pointed you out to me actually in the airport in Paris. He's like, hey, she's wearing a University of Maryland sweatshirt. I was like, oh, that's cool. It's random. And then you wound up on the same tour bus. So it's like, hey, we're supposed to be friends.
We were definitely supposed to be friends. Well, Carlie was in law school. I wanted to go to law school, and the rest is history. But Carlie, that's not where, your story is today. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the life that you lead today?
I am a divorced mom of two. I work for Z Family Law, which is my dream job. I have two huskies and an amazing partner, and my life is just beyond my wildest dreams, even from what I could have imagined a year ago, really.
So I wouldn't have you on this podcast if you had an easy path to get to where you are today. But I know something changed in your life, something big happened in your life that caused you to reevaluate things. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Oh, which one do you mean? We could take our pick here. I have not had an easy 43 years of life. I've had more than my share of things, is the nicest way I can put it. Um, I mean, we can start with law school. We want to go into my journey into becoming a lawyer.
Go for it.
Okay. I mean, I don't need to tell you how hard the first year of law school is. It really is make it or break a year. People drop out, people just can't handle it, people get weeded out. And I had moved to New Orleans for my first year of law school. I was like, okay, I'm going to do something big. I wanted to move away. My family was amazingly supportive. But about 2 weeks into my first year, my mother died suicide. And it was completely unexpected. None of us saw it coming at all. To say it was the hardest thing in the hardest possible year is an understatement. I went back home to Maryland for a week for her funeral and everything. Then my dad shipped me back to New Orleans, and I told my professors what had happened, and they were like, "Why are you here? You need to be home, like coping, dealing with this. Like your first year of law school is not the year to be grieving a massive traumatic loss." And I'm like, "My dad won't let me go home." So for better or worse, I got through it. Probably could have done better, but
But no, you don't get to look back and go, "Well, that was one of the hardest years of my life, and I could have done better," because you got to year 2
I did.
and you got on that plane that got you on that bus to Italy
I did.
after your
I did.
first year.
After my first year, my dad, I think he knew how hard that year was for me. So, much to my siblings' dismay, he took me to Italy and not them. But again, I'm also the one who speaks Italian. So he wanted a little personal translator. And we had an amazing time. And I got to meet you and your amazing family. And they're all very dear to me. So it was an amazing gift altogether. But to say that year was difficult is a massive understatement. And then I returned for year 2 thinking, "Okay, well, mom can't die again. It can't be that bad." And, that was August 2005 in New Orleans, um, also known as the largest natural disaster in the history of the United States, Hurricane Katrina. So that was, again, 2 or 3 weeks into the school year. I evacuated, I was safe. I lost everything, but I was safe, and I spent that semester in Baltimore living with my sister, so I had a place to land, and I didn't lose my momentum really. I was very fortunate to have a place at University of Maryland Law School in downtown Baltimore, so I was able to study there, got to spend time with you.
To say, I liked it because I got to spend some extra time with you. We had just become friends, and now I got to see you more often.
Exactly, so we got to grow our friendship, and I feel like we always cheered each other on, and you helped me through that period, and it was hard. It was a hard semester. Then I returned in January and finished out law school. But yeah, law school,
Law s law school
it,
is rough, but
it's
it
rough even
speaks
under the best of circumstances.
but it speaks to your resilience and to who you are as an individual. The fact that you could lose your mother in such a traumatic way, year 1, and deal with Hurricane Katrina, and I remember talking to you when you went back, and I said, "Well, what's there? Like, what's there?" You remember what you told me?
I don't, but I remember what I felt. I felt like I was supposed to be there. I was supposed to be part of the rebuilding story, and I was. And my friends and I, again, for better or worse, we were there. We kind of helped bring New Orleans back to life a little bit. And while it was living like Baghdad, it was like living in Baghdad for a while. We had National Guard everywhere. We had a curfew. You could
And that's
only
the kind of stuff that I was saying, like, it was not normal, like, I remember you telling me there were National Guards everywhere. I remember at one point you telling me there were curfews because they didn't have, like, streetlights and other kind of safety things, like, all completely set up and everything the way that it should be. That finding housing, because there was so little of it, was so hard, especially for students, some kind of transitional housing, that so many places that were familiar were just gone and decimated. That
right,
even going to the grocery store at times was difficult because there weren't as many of them as served what would normally be the population. Like, these are some of the things that I don't remember, being super into the news at the time, but I remember what I was watching in the news wasn't showing that. And seeing that every day while doing law school, again, this speaks to your incredible.
yeah. And my home failed to tell me until I showed up to move back in that the building was condemned. So I had driven 2 days down there from Maryland to find out I was homeless. Couch surfed for a while. Luckily, I had friends who, could do that for me. And I was fortunate enough to find another law student whose friend or whose roommate did not return. So I became roommates with him and we had a great time. It worked out. Rent was obscene because it could be at that time, housing was so scarce and everything was price gouged. And um, again, got through it best I could. We all had each other through that. So that it felt like a collective experience, at least, but with my mom, it was very much an individual experience. I felt very much alone in that, but not in Katrina. I felt alone in Katrina when I was up in Baltimore dealing with it, but, when I came back, I felt like, okay, these people know. They know what it's like. They know what I'm feeling. So it was easier to share in that collective experience.
So, both of those experiences, and you can take one at a time or answer them together as your law school experience. How do you think they shaped who you were as a lawyer and who you are today as a person?
I think my parents always raised me to not give up anyway. I was raised with the notion of, okay, do you have a problem or do you have a to-do list? And the difference is there something you can do about it? And if there is something you can do about it, then you have a to-do list, not a problem. And that's kind of how I approach my lawyering. It's how I approach kind of my life. Like I can sit around and be sad and just frustrated, or I can get to work on my to-do list. And those experiences really kind of put that raising into practice.
And I will tell you, this is one of the things that so many of our guests keep saying, whether it's a business failure or a divorce or something really hard, the way to get through it is to just keep moving. If you stop and wallow, you get stuck. But no matter how hard it is, if you don't stop moving, you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, one step at a time, even if it's a baby step. And sometimes you'll find that your progress is not linear. Sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back. Sometimes it's two steps forward, one step back. Sometimes it's a weeble wobble all the way through. But as long as you're still moving and you just don't give up, then you'll get somewhere.
So I know there's a lot of other times that was not easy, but why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your life from after graduating up until the big one that we're going to talk about?
Um, well, I got married at 28. You were there.
I was late, but I got there.
You were late, but you were there. It was a great time, great party. But I think I knew relatively early on it was not gonna last. We just weren't really right for each other. I felt a lot of pressure to get married. His family's religious, and it felt like the thing I was supposed to do and not a thing I actually truly wanted. I did want a family, but anyway, that's neither here nor there at this point. I'm not at all regretful of my choices. They've all brought me here, and I have 2 amazing children. But over time, I did notice my health declining quite seriously to the point where I was in and out of hospitals. I think it was about 2017, things started getting very difficult.
So what do you mean by in and out of hospitals? Like what was going on?
I kept getting these bouts of very acute colitis, and colitis is just where your colon, which is your large intestine, just gets inflamed. And no one could quite figure out why. Went through a lot of undignified tests. But, they ultimately found that I have diverticulitis. They even did an exploratory surgery to see what, if anything, could be done about it, and they decided at that time nothing, only for me to continue to get sicker and sicker. And then after my 40th birthday, I just was not okay at all. Like, I just got so progressively sick. I was in pain constantly. It's like my body was shutting down. It was like it was just rejecting everything. So in January of 23, yes, 2020, I had my first real colon surgery where they do a colon resection, where they essentially cut out a section of your colon and kind of sew the other parts together. They took out a foot of my colon, which is one third of my colon, and everything went fine. And it
That's a
went
big
well.
girl surgery. As
That
someone
is a
who's had
big girl surgery.
surgery like on and that's a big girl surgery. That's not for the weak of heart.
No, that was it was a very, very difficult surgery. I had already had many surgeries before. I'm not a stranger to surgery, but this one was an inpatient surgery. I was in the hospital 3 days, I wanna say, but everything looked fine. So I went home, but, about 6 weeks in, I started getting very sick. Was in a massive amount of pain again. I was afraid, maybe I thought that they had warned me about getting a hernia, that, if maybe I was doing too much, I would form a hernia and that would, require going back in. But as it turned out, my colon ruptured anyway. And not because anything had gone wrong, but just because it's diverticulitis and that can happen. And that's partially why they did the resection in the first place was um, to prevent that from happening, but it did anyway.
So I will tell you, I know a lot, my grandfather had colon cancer as well as, I've had some surgeries on my intestines and colons and all those fun things, but most people don't understand that kind of surgery and the risks of like a colon rupturing. Like what can happen to you when your colon ruptures and what can
I
they
found
do with
out.
it?
I found out I got sepsis and almost died. I That was easily the sickest I'd ever been and the most pain I'd ever been, and I've given birth twice. um, yeah, 0 out of 10, do not recommend ever getting sepsis. And then I spent 10 days in the hospital, more even more on antibiotics. I think I was on antibiotics for about 3 months. I remember feeling like the blueberry girl in Willy Wonka. I was just so bloated, full of, like, fluids and antibiotics, and, oh gosh, it was terrible. While I was in the hospital, I think it was about day 3 or 4 when they finally figured out what was going on with me, they knew they had to open me up. They had tried all sorts of things to make me better. Nothing was working, absolutely nothing. And I completely resigned. I completely resigned. I remember looking at the 4 walls of my hospital room, just accepting the fact that I was never gonna leave. I was never gonna see my children again. I I was very okay with it. I was not suicidal, but I had no desire to keep living. I needed so badly to be free from my body, was kind of the way I felt about it.
So I want people to really understand you were 40 years old. How old were your kids at that time?
Say, my son was in 4th grade, so he was 9, my daughter was 7.
And that kind of pain, not just that kind of pain of like how much it hurt, but because of where it is, there's not much, if anything, that can be done pain medicine wise.
That's the thing you don't realize. I when you have, a massive colon problem, you're not allowed to have antibiotics. I mean, not antibiotics, but, painkillers. So all the good painkillers, not for me because they want your colon moving, and all the good painkillers will kind of halt your colon or slow it down, and they were trying to get mine as functional as possible, and
So it sounds
so
easy. You're like, oh, I'm in the hospital for 3 days. What can we? But that kind of sustained pain. I mean, looking at the 4 walls and thinking, I'm not going to see my kids and I'm okay. I cannot even imagine the psychic pain you must have been in, the emotional pain, let alone the physical.
I couldn't think beyond the pain. I couldn't think beyond it. I couldn't see my life beyond it. It I could not see life beyond that pain anymore. I just knew I needed to be free from it, even if it meant never seeing my kids again.
I
Um,
remember hearing about the things that were happening to you and being so worried from a distance. And what was even more scary on my side, my aunt had sepsis multiple times, but at the same time as you. And so I knew how serious it was, but I also didn't know what you knew and didn't want to. I wasn't sure if I'd be scaring you or not, but I know how terrifying it can all be and how it can go downhill in a heartbeat.
I wasn't even scared. I was just done. I was just done. Um, they opened me up. They took out 8 more inches of colon. So I have what we call my semicolon. I have half a colon. Um,
You told me something your doctor said to you, and I remember this, and I think it's really important to say on the podcast.
I'll see if I can remember it. I remember I felt like I was giving up, and she said, "Not on my watch." She said, "You are not giving up." She's like, "I'll be damned if I'm gonna let you die right now."
But
And she fought for me when I could not fight for myself.
that's an amazing doctor.
She's a badass. Dr. Kelly Finan, love you. You're amazing. She stayed late doing my surgery. I remember I was the only one in the recovery room, but that's a whole other story. But they decided to kind of let my colon rest, and while they were figuring out what my future was going to look like, they gave me a colostomy, which felt kind of like a death sentence in and of itself. I don't mean to be kind of glib about it, but to me, that was terrible. I was a 40-year-old woman. You know, I felt like I had all this life ahead of me, and now I'm, like, dying, and I have a colostomy bag. And
So
while it's not the end of the world, it felt like it at the time.
understandably. So at what moment did you realize you were not actually going to die this time?
It took me actually a couple months, I think, to really accept it. It was a very, very traumatic experience. I remember waking up from the surgery again, and I was, like, the only one in the recovery room, and I woke up screaming and crying, not just because of the pain, which was excruciating, by the way, despite the fact that I was then on painkillers. I remember they gave me fentanyl and Dilaudid, and I was still in excruciating pain.
That's a 1-2 punch.
It was a one-two punch, and it still didn't touch it, but I remember just feeling sheer despair that I had lived, that I'd survived the surgery because I wanted so badly to die in it, and I was just crying out of despair that I had to move on like this, and the rest of my time in the hospital, I didn't watch TV, didn't watch movies, didn't read books, nothing. Could not perceive anything. I didn't have the mental energy. I didn't have the emotional energy. I stared at the four walls. I had visitors. My dad, he hopped in his car, drove from Florida, and he came and he was with me. And my sister even spent her birthday coming to take care of me in the hospital. She like gave me a little
She's
facial, made
another one
sure
that
I
was
was
not letting you
clean.
go anywhere on her watch.
She was not either. She was not. She's a big part of my survival story.
What did it feel
She
like internally during this time period?
I was just I'd survived, but I was dead. I I was still dead. I think I lost sight of a lot of things because I couldn't see my kids. Um, I'm not sure the reasons why, but children weren't allowed to visit, so I couldn't even see them. I
Maybe
didn't get to see
germs?
them the whole time.
I don't
I
know.
don't know. I'm not sure, but they weren't allowed to visit at all. I FaceTimed and things like that and tried to put on a happy face, but I was still upset that I'd survived. And even when I got home, I had a walker. I had a bed rail, I had a shower stool, I had all the old lady things. My daughter called it my old lady gear. I had my colostomy bag. That was a whole other learning process, and and I didn't even know if it was gonna be forever. They said, "This might be able to be reversed depending on how your colon is, or this might be for the rest of your life." So I spent a long time not knowing if this would be the rest of my life or if this was just gonna be a chapter.
What was the hardest part to admit to yourself during that season?
I think it's not so much that it was hard to admit, but it was hard for me to learn. And that was that I matter. I have value just because I exist. When I was in the hospital, I remember feeling incredibly useless. I couldn't do anything for anybody. I remember, gosh, I remember being upset that I lost my Duolingo streak. I remember being upset that I couldn't contact my clients. My clients didn't know where I was or what was happening to me. I felt like I was letting a lot of people down, and it was hard for me to learn to find value in myself without it relating to other people. I had done some therapy that summer to try to process all of the medical trauma and everything that had happened. I remember that was a question that my therapist asked me. She goes, "Who are you to you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm a good mom. I'm a good daughter. I'm a good sister." She goes, "No, who is Carlie to Carlie? Not the daughter, not the wife, not the mom. Who are you when you take away all of that?" And I was like, "I don't fucking know."
This is how I define myself. This is who I am. What are you
Uh,
talking about?
for better or worse, again, I was one of those children who felt like she needed to earn love and respect through achievement and things that I could do for others. And this was a season of my life where I could not do anything for anybody. I couldn't even do anything for myself. So I very much struggled with my self-worth and my value. I was like, why am I here? Why did I survive this? What was the point of this? Like, what do I do now? And that was probably the hardest pill to swallow. But again, I learned I matter because I exist.
Kept you functioning when things were at their worst.
It was beyond the worst. But again, I found my value because I'm here. God did keep me here for something. Still don't quite know what. Maybe it's just because he thinks I'm delightful. Who knows? But in the
Other
end,
theories. You are delightful, but I have other theories.
but I mean, maybe it's not for other people, but just because. Just because. And in that process, I thought a lot about, okay, I survived this. I overcame all of this. What is my life going to look like now?
So now
Especially
we've gotten there, the turning point.
as, yes, the turning point truly, okay, and this is terrible, but the turning point was when I learned a colostomy was going to be reversed.
Okay,
I was like,
that's not terrible.
it
That
is,
for you,
it's a little vain. It's a little vain.
look, I actually follow a lot of influencers with colostomy bags. I don't know why. A aunt of mine had one at one point. I got curious, and I applaud everybody for being so, proud of their bag to save their life. All that being said, for you, that marked the end of a medical trauma. Like for you, that marked the beginning and the end. And of course, it was a good thing for you. It doesn't mean shame on people who have colostomy bags.
No. My sister tried really hard to help me reframe the whole colostomy thing. She goes, don't look at this as a thing that's holding me back. Look at this as a thing. Thank you, Annie and Lucy. Look at this as a thing that is helping you live, a thing that helped you be here today. And over time, because I spent 7 months with it, I kind of more or less accepted it. But let me tell you, the day I learned it was going to be reversed, I cried so much, tears of joy. I remember thinking, oh my God, I've never been so excited for a surgery in my life. Yeah. So when that was reversed, happy, happy girl. I was a very happy girl. But I truly took stock in my life. And now I'm wondering why I have 2 dogs.
I have 3 and 2 cats, so
Yeah, 2 huskies who are very much part of my story too. But I took stock in how I wanted this new life to look. And I realized it was not part of this marriage. I realized it was time. There were some things that had led up to that that really contributed to the breakdown and dissolution, but truly it was me going through that journey and me growing through that, realizing who I am to me. And who I am is not a person who will accept the way I was living in that marriage. And now I find myself, I have way more respect and love and self-worth than I ever have in my life. And I was prepared to do that alone if I had to. But I don't have to do that alone because I have the most amazing partner I could ever dream of. And I truly, truly thank God every day, every night, and every morning that I get to live this life now. And not just because of him, but because of me.
you made big changes because it
I
wasn't
did
just
make big
getting
changes.
divorced. I mean, getting divorced, it wasn't just that. What else was it? And by the way, let's take a moment there. What about this experience and this I have a moment that I can choose how I want to live made you look back and go, I need to make this particular change?
I was not comfortable with the home that my children are being raised in. I wanted them to have at least one happy parent. And while my husband was like, well, they need both their parents. I'm like, no, they need happy parents, even if it's just one of us. But they get to know me now. They get to know me as a happy, self-loving person. And I would much rather them have a happy parent than 2 parents who are unhappy together. And I hope he finds his happiness too.
What other changes did you make
I
for you in your
joined
life?
ZFL, which is like, dream job.
And how do you think this experience has affected you as a lawyer?
I think I've always fancied myself as a very empathetic, compassionate person anyway, but having my own new beginning like this, I feel like I resonate so much with our clients. I look them in the eye and I say, "Me too," hashtag me too, because I have lived this. I have been in your shoes. I have taken these steps. I truly know what it is like for you right now. And while I represented myself in my divorce because, hey, I'm a divorce lawyer and, it was fairly simple for our situation, it is not like that for everybody. And I feel very grateful that I not only have the tools, but I have the experience to help our clients through this, what can be one of the most amazing things in their life. It feels like it's the end, but hey, this is not the end.
It is not the end, but
This is
it's
not the end, just the
we tell
beginning.
everybody like this moment can feel awful, but if you keep going, you can get to that magic new beginning. And you are a walking, talking billboard to our clients of like, look, it really can be that way. But it's not just the walking, talking billboard that I think you learned and that this experience brought to you as a lawyer. Because one of the coolest things that I have seen is you getting to play the part of your doctor. I have literally watched you emotionally pick up clients, dust them off, and say, not on my watch, you're giving up. I
It's
watched
true.
you without giving details. I watched you do it with a dad not too long ago. And even though in his case it would have been way too easy to just be like, fine, fold, like have whatever, you were like, not on my watch. Those kids deserve their dad. And I can't help but think that experience with your doctor and your sister, that sometimes in that moment, you need that person that's going to pick you up and say, not on my watch.
She says sometimes you need someone to fight for you when you just can't anymore. And I feel so beyond privileged that I get to do that. I truly do.
I do too. We are very, very lucky.
We are. And we have amazing clients who are amazing parents and they make it easy.
So, what is the biggest gift that came from this experience for you?
Believing in myself, knowing that I am worth love and respect just because I'm here and I'm me, not because of anything I can do for anybody. I feel extraordinarily grateful and privileged that I can do things for people, but there are going to be times again in my life where I can't. And that doesn't mean I'm not worth any less. I think I'm worth everything because I'm here.
And how's your health been since your divorce?
Better than ever. Better than
What
ever.
impact do you think that had? You're not the
I
first person to tell me that their health dramatically improved after leaving.
It's not a coincidence. I really think my body was rejecting my marriage. It was like, girlfriend, if you don't leave this man, we're taking you out. You don't leave, we're leaving. We're taking you. So
So, if you're talking
I,
to one of your listeners who's either in not the right marriage that's making them sick, or they're in that hospital bed, not sure if this is the end for them, what advice do you have for them?
invest in yourself, invest in your health, invest in you. I look back at so many decisions I've made throughout my life where I bet on myself and invested in myself. And 100% of the time, that investment paid off. And don't be afraid to lean on others when you can't fight. There are people like me and my sister and my surgeon who can fight for you when you can't. And that's okay too.
Is there anything that you wish someone had told you during this season of your life?
Gosh, many things have been said to me. um, something someone I wish someone had said something to me.
Yes.
I think I would have liked to hear that I was allowed to feel whatever I was feeling. I have a lot of relatives who like to tell me how I feel or tell me how I should feel, how I should react, how I should process. But, we're all processing things in our own way and grieving things in our own way. Not everyone has agreed with my decision to end my marriage or anything. In the end, I'm the one who lives with my choices. I'm the one who feels my feelings, and I'm allowed to do that in any way I feel appropriate as long as it's not hurting other people. But I wish I'd had a little bit more permission to feel and process however I felt.
You were literally dying.
I was
And when
literally
you look down the barrel of that particular gun, I think it really clarifies some things for you. And
it
one
took
of
a
those,
while. It took a
I'm not
while.
saying instantly, but one of those things is to find more joy, to find more happiness, and to live in alignment with your values because we all only have this one precious life. And I'm honored to have gotten to watch your transformation. You know, as someone sitting on the sidelines being a cheerleader, you look different. And I don't
That's right.
mean your style looks different. I mean,
I hear
you
it all the
like your eyes
time.
and an
It The past 2 years, that is all I've heard is how I have color to me again. Can't really tell in this light, but, I have color to me again. I have light behind my eyes. I have music in my voice again. And and I don't think it's just because of the divorce. I think it's because of everything. It's because I chose me. I invested in me. And I did realize how fucking short life is. It was almost gone like that for me. It really was. And I was like, life is too short to keep living in ways that don't serve me anymore.
Thank you so much for being on this podcast. And I have to ask the question I ask every single person on it. If you could complete this sentence, this is not the end, it's the beginning of blank.
Beginning of me, beginning of me. I feel more myself than I've ever felt in my entire life.
Thank you again. And thank you also for part of your journey being joining Team ZFL. Our clients are so lucky to have you, and so are our teammates.
It's an absolute privilege. Couldn't ask for a better a better work family, truly.
All right. We will put if you do want to work with Carlie and you live in Maryland, we will make sure that you know where to find her. You can always go to www.zfamilylaw.com. But thank you so much for being so brave and coming on and sharing your show, or excuse me, sharing your experience on this show. I
Absolutely.
I cannot tell you how inspiring it was for me.
I had always made it a thing to try to normalize these things that I have gone through. I don't feel like we should sit around and be ashamed of it. We can talk. It's a lot more relatable than people think.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.